He did not expect silence to sound so violent. The house that had always welcomed him with warmth and quiet dignity felt wrong the moment he stepped inside, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. He had returned home 2 days early, a bouquet of fresh flowers still wrapped in paper in his hand, his mind full of plans and relief and love. Then he saw it. His elderly mother was on the cold marble floor, her thin hands bracing herself, her walking cane bent awkwardly under her weight, while the woman he was supposed to marry stood above her, leg raised, fury carved into her face. In that frozen second, his entire world cracked open, and the man he had been all his life was forced to choose who he would become. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and standing up for those who cannot protect themselves, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps stories like this alive. He stood there, rooted, as the reality slammed into him harder than any betrayal he had ever known. This was not a misunderstanding or a bad moment taken out of context. This was cruelty raw and undeniable. His mother, the woman who had raised him with gentle hands and endless patience, who had worked long hours sewing clothes for neighbors after his father passed just to make sure he never went to bed hungry, was being treated as an obstacle, something to be pushed aside. The fiancé he had trusted with his future had shown her true self in the most unforgivable way, and the shock of it burned through his chest like fire. For years, he had built his life brick by brick, starting from nothing. After his father died, the weight of responsibility fell on his shoulders far too early. He remembered walking to school in shoes with worn soles, pretending not to notice the looks from other children, while his mother smiled bravely and told him that dignity was not something money could buy or steal. That lesson had guided him through every struggle, every sleepless night when he worked late to grow his business, every deal that threatened his values. His success had never been just about wealth. It had been about honoring the sacrifices made for him. When he met his fiancée, she had seemed like a symbol of everything he had achieved. Elegant, confident, admired by everyone around her, she fit seamlessly into the life of luxury he now lived. She spoke kindly to his mother when others were watching, offered help in public, and praised family values with practiced ease. He wanted to believe her affection was real, that love had finally rewarded his years of perseverance. He ignored the small signs, the impatient sighs, the subtle complaints about his mother's slow steps, the way she insisted the older woman should stay out of sight during important gatherings. He told himself it was stress, misunderstanding, nothing more. Now, standing in the echoing hall of his own home, he realized how blind he had been. His mother's face was pale, not just from pain, but from shame, the kind that comes when someone feels like a burden in a place that should be safe. The house, filled with light and expensive decor, suddenly felt hollow. All the wealth in the world could not soften the cruelty unfolding within its walls. He moved forward, not with rage, but with a terrifying calm that surprised even him. Every step felt heavy, as though the past and present were pressing down on his shoulders. He helped his mother up carefully, feeling how fragile she had become over the years, how light she felt in his arms. That simple act broke something inside him. He saw not just an elderly woman, but the younger version of her, standing at a sewing machine late at night, rubbing tired eyes, whispering prayers for his future. The fiancé's expression shifted when she realized she was no longer alone, when the reality of being seen settled in. The performance, the mask, the power she thought she held, all began to crumble. But it was too late. Some moments cannot be undone. Some truths once revealed leave scars that never fade. He did not raise his voice or lose control. Instead, he made a decision that would change every life connected to his. In that moment, he chose to protect what truly mattered. The engagement, the wedding plans, the carefully crafted image of a perfect future dissolved into nothing. He understood that love without compassion is empty, and success without humanity is failure. As the days that followed unfolded, the house transformed. He canceled the wedding without explanation to the curious social circles that buzzed around him. He did not care about rumors or reputations. He cared only about restoring dignity to the woman who had given him everything. He hired caregivers not to replace himself, but to ensure his mother was never alone or vulnerable again. He redesigned the home, making it safer, warmer, filled with spaces where she could move freely without fear. His mother, though shaken, slowly began to heal. She tried to downplay what had happened, as mothers often do, unwilling to be the source of conflict in their children's lives. But he refused to let her carry that burden. He spent evenings with her listening to stories he had heard 100 times before, hearing them anew through the lens of gratitude and regret. Each story was a reminder of who he was and who he needed to be. The experience changed him in ways success never had. He became more attentive, more grounded. He started a foundation quietly, without press releases or public praise, focused on protecting elderly individuals from abuse and neglect, especially those dependent on family members. And he funded shelters, legal aid, and support programs, remembering how easily his own mother could have been silenced if he had arrived just a little later. People noticed the change. Friends spoke of his calmer presence. Employees felt a deeper respect for him, not because of his wealth, but because of his integrity. He no longer chased admiration. He understood that the truest measure of a person is how they treat the most vulnerable when no one is watching. His mother, once hesitant and withdrawn, found her voice again. She laughed more, walked with renewed confidence, and even insisted on helping others in small ways, baking for neighbors, offering advice to young parents struggling with loss. Her strength, though quieter now, remained unbreakable. The memory of that day never left him. It lived in his mind as a warning and a lesson. He knew that evil does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it hides behind smiles, charm, and polished appearances. He also knew that goodness requires action, not just intention. Standing by silently is its own kind of cruelty. As time passed, he realized that returning home early had not been an accident, but a turning point. Fate had placed him there at that exact moment to reveal a truth he could no longer ignore. In choosing his mother, he had chosen himself. Just before the ending, take a moment to comment below and tell us what you would have done in his place. Your voice matters, and your perspective could inspire someone facing a similar situation. Near the end of his journey, on a quiet afternoon, he sat beside his mother as sunlight streamed through the windows, warming the room. There was no luxury in that moment. No grand gesture, only peace. He understood then that love is not proven by words spoken in public or promises made for show, but by actions taken when it is inconvenient, uncomfortable, or costly. If this story touched your heart, if it made you feel something deep and real, please engage with this video. Like it, share it, and let us know in the comments how it made you feel. Your engagement helps spread messages of compassion and courage to those who need them most. Because sometimes the most shocking actions are not acts of revenge or anger, but quiet decisions rooted in love, dignity, and the courage to do what is right, no matter the cost. The days after the truth came out did not explode with drama the way people imagine betrayal should. There were no screaming matches, no public scandals splashed across headlines. Instead, there was a heavy, suffocating quiet that followed him everywhere, like a shadow that refused to leave. At night, when the house finally slept, he would sit alone in his study, lights dimmed, replaying that single moment over and over again. The image of his mother on the floor haunted him more than any business failure ever had. It was not just the act itself that hurt, but the realization of how close he had come to building a future on a lie. His former fiancée did not disappear quietly. Messages arrived first, long and emotional, filled with apologies that felt rehearsed, explanations that blamed stress, pressure, misunderstanding. Then came the anger, the accusations that he had overreacted, that he was choosing sentiment over reason, that his loyalty to his mother would always destroy his relationships. Reading those words only strengthened his resolve. He saw now that true love never asks you to abandon your conscience. While the world expected him to move on quickly, to replace one glamorous future with another, he chose something far more difficult. He slowed down. For the first time in decades, he allowed himself to simply be present. Mornings began with breakfast beside his mother, helping her with simple things he once assumed would always be there. He listened when she spoke, really listened, not half-focused while checking messages or planning meetings. In those quiet routines, he discovered a kind of wealth he had neglected for years. But healing is never linear. Some days his mother would fall silent, staring out the window, lost in thoughts she refused to share. On other days, guilt crept into her voice as she apologized for being a problem, for needing help, for existing in a world that seemed to move faster every year. Each time, he reassured her with patience, reminding her that her presence was not a burden, but the foundation of everything he was. Slowly, those words began to sink in. The story, however, did not stay contained within their walls. Friends, business partners, even distant relatives eventually learned what had happened. Reactions were mixed. Some praised him for his courage. Others whispered that he had thrown away a perfect life for sentimentality. Mhm. He learned to ignore them all. For the first time, he was not living for approval. He was living in alignment with his values. As months passed, the foundation he quietly started began to change lives. He visited shelters anonymously, sitting with elderly men and women who had been forgotten by their families, listening to stories that echoed his own mother's fears. He funded legal cases for seniors who had been abused, neglected, or robbed of dignity by those meant to protect them. Each face reminded him how easily this could have been his mother's fate if he had arrived home just a few minutes later, better. One afternoon, during a visit to one of the care centers he supported, an elderly woman took his hand and thanked him with tears in her eyes. She told him that for the first time in years, she felt seen. That moment broke him in a way success never had. He realized that pain, when transformed into purpose, becomes something powerful. Back home, his mother noticed the change in him too. She watched him move through the house with a lighter heart, no longer carrying the restless urgency that once defined him. One evening, as they sat together watching the sun dip below the horizon, she reached for his hand. Her grip was weak, but the emotion behind it was strong. She told him she was proud of the man he had become, not because of his wealth, but because of his courage. That single sentence healed wounds he did not even know he carried. Time did what it always does. It softened sharp edges. The memory of betrayal lost its sting, replaced by clarity. He no longer felt anger toward the woman who had revealed her true nature. Instead, he felt gratitude. Without her cruelty, he might never have learned how close he was to losing what truly mattered. Some lessons arrive wrapped in pain, but they are lessons nonetheless. Years later, people would speak of him not just as a successful millionaire, but as a man of rare integrity. Younger entrepreneurs sought his advice, expecting tips on business and strategy. What they received instead were lessons on empathy, responsibility, and the importance of choosing character over convenience. He told them that success means nothing if it costs you your soul. His mother aged gracefully, surrounded by care, love, and respect. The fear that once lived in her eyes disappeared, replaced by quiet confidence. She knew now without doubt that she was safe. That knowledge alone was worth more than every luxury the house contained. In the end, the shocking act that changed everything was not the cruelty he witnessed, but the choice he made afterward. He proved that being powerful is not about control, but about protection. That being wealthy is not about what you own, but about what you refuse to sacrifice. And perhaps the most powerful truth of all was this: sometimes life tests us in the most painful ways to reveal who we really are. When that moment comes, the right choice may cost us comfort, status, or dreams, but it will give us something far greater in return: peace. If this continuation moved you, stirred your emotions, or made you reflect on your own values, don't scroll away quietly. Like this video, share it with someone who believes in family and compassion, and leave a comment telling us what part touched you the most. Your engagement helps keep stories like this alive and reminds the world that kindness still matters.